So I'm starting the recording now. I'm just going to say hello again for those that joined the recording. I'm Kristen Wright. I'm an assistant director with DukeEngage and my co-presenter here.
Hi, everyone. My name is Azana. I'm a senior Spanish and Global Health double major, and I participated in the summer 2021 DukeEngage Durham program.
Okay, so in this session, we're going to cover just very briefly sort of what is DukeEngage, make sure you know the basics. We're going to talk about how to decide what to apply for, whether to apply and what to apply for. So that's always a big topic. And then you're going to hear some stories. In addition to Azana, I have two other students here who have done the program in recent years, and I'll invite them to share some of their stories with you and kind of what it's meant for them. We want you to leave with a sense of whether DukeEngage is for you and whether you want to take the next step and apply. Go ahead and put questions into chat as we go if you like. We will either address them as we go if we can see them, but since I'm sharing my screen, I won't see much. Azana, feel free to jump in if you see something immediately related to what we're talking about, but if not, we will get to them at the very end. Okay. So 2022, we will be back in person. You're welcome to share a reaction there too. Mine is hooray, hooray, hooray. That means, and I do want to acknowledge that we have run 2 summers of DukeEngage virtually, and it went way better than I could have expected. There's some great stories from DukeEngage virtually, and you'll hear some of those from Azana and Kelsey a little bit later, but we're excited to be back in person for 2022. So on our side, that means that on top of the risk assessment process that we normally do each year, which is pretty rigorous, we're going through really lengthy assessments related to COVID, evaluating things like, whether a country has been rated safe for travel by Duke's Global Travel Committee, which uses CDC ratings, the requirements to enter each country, whether, testing and treatment are readily available, what would happen if a student or a staff person had to be isolated, for example. On your side, that does mean vaccinations, which all of you have dealt with so far, but just to note that if you have an exemption here at Duke, it may not apply if you're participating in a DukeEngage program. It just depends on the requirements of the host site that you might be going to. Also, passports. I want to make a big point about this because, of course, they're always necessary for international travel. But if you're interested in international programs and you don't have a passport yet this year, start the process of applying now. We have heard that it is taking extra long this year, 3-4 months, even more, and you'll need to have it in hand by February. So that's important. If you have one, check the expiration date, because for most countries, they require your passport to be valid at least 6 months beyond the date of your departure from that country, so February 2023. So check on that. Go ahead and update that passport if you need to. Okay.
All right, so to jump into really what is DukeEngage. So I think that this is very much a unique program to Duke, and sometimes there's a little misconceptions about what to expect or what the program offers for students. So DukeEngage, students address critical social issues like education, environment, migration, and health in a way that is, one, immersive. So that means that students are living and working in the community for 8 weeks, really getting to know it, not from the perspective of a tourist, but as someone participating in the everyday life of the community. And so a really core element of DukeEngage is that we're not there to, also partake in all the tourist attractions and leisure times and activities. Like, of course, there will be time to get to know our surrounding environment. The core element is that we are there to give of ourselves, to be in service with our community partners, and to really kind of know what it's like to do the dirty work within our placement community. And so it's also collaborative, and that means that students work with and not for local organizations, many of whom have partnered with Duke for years. So just to reiterate what I just said, that we are really there to work with these organizations, and we're not imposing our ideas of what's right or what should be done. We really want to learn how to best suit them and how we can best use our assets to further their mission. And finally, it's community driven, so meaning that the issues and projects are identified by the community and not by Duke students or faculty. And when all of this is accompanied by critical reflection, which is the process of taking time to reflect, not just on what you're doing, but why you're doing it, and why it matters, and then what that means for you going forward, what that means for the community going forward, it can be a really transformative learning experience. And so like a really critical key element in every program is the reflection time that we get to have individually, not only with our partners, but also with our individual groups as well, talking about what worked well, what didn't work well, how we can move forward and apply those skills.
So really, what is it in terms of the concrete? The most basic thing you could say about DukeEngage is that it is a collection of group programs. They are all run, designed, led by Duke faculty or senior staff members. They are generally about 8 to 12 students in size. A couple of them have been slightly longer. They are about 8 weeks long, every program. The dates vary, but they're all about 8 weeks long. And the heart of them is full-time work in a nonprofit organization, plus reflection, which Azana mentioned, could be written, discussion, visual, and other activities that help you understand kind of the cultural context of a program. Fully funded means that all of your basic costs will be covered. And by basic costs, we mean everything from flights to room and board and transportation. This is, I would say, at the level of a person in that local community, a young person, let's say, in that local community. So think something equivalent to dorms in terms of accommodation. Think preparing your own meals in terms of food, public transit, so that kind of thing. If you are on financial aid, the other thing to say there is that the earnings requirement that you may have for the summer is waived if you participate in DukeEngage. Preparation. So we believe that to do all this ethically does require some good preparation. So all DukeEngage students participate in a series of seminars in the spring, as well as meeting with their groups for some program-specific orientation meetings. And in terms of follow-up, we really just encourage students to build on their experiences once they come back, and some do that through further volunteering or actual academic path that they have here at Duke, research, and so we'll have some examples of that a little bit later on from our DukeEngage leaders, our guides.
Okay, so now to kind of look at what is it not exactly? So the first thing is that it's not exactly volunteering, which can sometimes be seen more of a transaction where we come in kind of knowing what we're going to do beforehand. We're providing a service to an organization rather than forming a relationship where you work together to make a change. And so that really means that, you know, we might have a general sense of what the organization or community partner needs going in. However, that's very likely to change, and we're kind of expected to adapt to the circumstances and also help them figure out what can best be tended to during our time at the program. And the second thing is it's not exactly an internship. And so the organization students work with sometimes refer to it that way because that's what they're used to. And students do gain both hard and soft professional skills and gain insight into potential careers. But the reflection and the cultural learning aspect is what really makes DukeEngage much more than just an internship. It's really a holistic growing experience for you, both professionally, personally, and as well as kind of like your global citizenship and global perspective of how to work in circumstances that you're unfamiliar with. And then finally, it's not a study abroad. So you will not receive course credit for this program, but you will receive a notation on your transcript for having completed it. And it can be another avenue to explore academic interests. For me, it works like that. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. But you can also use a DukeEngage program to fulfill an experiential learning requirement, for example, for global health, which is also fulfilled mine, for environmental science, public policy, that requires some kind of field work or experience with minimum hour requirements. Certain DukeEngage programs can be pre-approved and also applied for exemption, whether or not it meets the requirements. You can do that as well. But then just to reiterate, you will not receive any kind of course credit for completing the program.
Okay, let's talk about eligibility real quick. The simplest way to put it is that first, second, and third year students in good standing are all eligible. good standing just means not on academic or disciplinary probation at the time of the program. Seniors who are graduating in the spring are not eligible. You have to be planning to return to Duke for at least one semester, both for reasons of kind of your status at Duke and what Duke is able to do for you in terms of funding and liability and that kind of thing, but also for that that core value that we have of students kind of bringing their experience back to Duke, letting it shape them, letting it shape their peers and the campus culture. I didn't see whether there was anyone on here who participated in the past 2 years, but normally DukeEngage is just a one-time opportunity since it's such a valuable funding opportunity. But because of the pandemic, we are allowing students who participated in a virtual program in either 2020 or 2021, not both, but to apply to DukeEngage another time and have a shot at an in-person experience. I will say here, we get asked a lot about the right time to apply to DukeEngage, and there really is not an answer there. There's no preference given to upperclassmen, for example. All the program directors I know want a really diverse team of students, and it really just depends on your goals and your path that you want to take here. So students who've done DukeEngage after their first year often find ways to use it, to let it shape them. They change their minds about majors or academic pursuits. They use it to explore their interests, but students who do it later can kind of flip that and take everything they've done here at Duke and try and find a DukeEngage experience that will really allow them to kind of cement that. So historically, just statistically, most people are in the middle. Most people do it after sophomore year, but again, that's not for any particular reason. And it's about evenly divided otherwise between post-freshman and post-junior years. There was, I'll mention, some fun evidence in some of the evaluation we did this year that more students are applying after their first year. And not only that, but that there was some really good benefits to their well-being in particular after first year. Nice to see. Okay, so we're going to hear some stories from the 3 student leaders that I have on here. We call them guides, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen and maybe suggest that if you haven't already, that you change your view to speaker view so that you will find them when they start talking. But I will let them introduce themselves. These students could talk for hours about their experience, and they would if you invited them for coffee, I'm sure. And you will be able to contact them through our website very shortly. But for now, why don't we start with Azana, since you've been talking, you can keep it rolling and just give us not just your name, but go into year, major, which program you participated in. And here's the challenge: 1 sentence that summarizes the program, the theme, the organization you worked with, and what you did. For
Great.
starters.
So yes, again, I'm Azana. I'm a senior this year, Spanish and Global Health double major, and I participated in the DukeEngage Durham Migrant Youth and Community Justice after COVID-19. In one sentence, that's going to be tough, but essentially our program was centered around addressing the social determinants of health for refugee and immigrant families in the Durham area. So that includes issues of transportation, health service, education, things of that nature. And so each student was paired with a community organization in which we completed a program kind of separate from our cohort. And then additionally with our cohort, we were also given a student mentor who had recently arrived to United States, perhaps was in Durham Community College or another participating college in the area, where we kind of talked about our experiences and served as resources for them too. So it was kind of twofold.
Pretty good. Jalen, you want to go?
All right. Yeah. Hello, everyone. My name is Jalen. I'm also a senior. I'm a double biology environmental science major, and I did DukeEngage Thailand. All right, 1 sentence. Here we go. So the program was focused on teaching English in the community and promoting coastal conservation. And I was working with a partner organization called GVI, which stands for Global Vision International. And I was basically running a lot of English and environment workshops throughout the community, and working with the Thai Navy in a sea turtle care and rehabilitation program.
Nice. And Kelsey.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kelsey. I'm a senior studying psychology on the pre-med track. And I actually did DukeEngage twice. So I did it for Boston in 2020, and then I did Zhuhai in 2021. And both programs focused on increasing educational equity. So for Boston, I worked with a nonprofit that provides support for underrepresented youth interested in STEM. And for Zhuhai, I worked as an English teacher for Chinese middle schoolers.
Why don't a couple of you just share with everybody maybe a combination of kind of why you wanted to do DukeEngage in the first place, or why you decided to apply, and how you decided which program to apply for. Jalen, you have something to say there?
Yeah, so DukeEngage was actually one of the main reasons I applied to Duke in the first place, since I'm all for like big opportunities that should go out into the world and make a difference. As cliche as that sounds, it's true. And in terms of figuring out what program I wanted to do, it was a lot to start out, but I knew I wanted to do something international, just to learn more about, let's say, part of the world / cultures I really knew next to nothing about. And then I did my search based on what my interests were, being a science major and really interested in marine biology. So then when I came over to Thailand and learned it was focused on coastal conservation, I was sold after that.
Similar to Jalen, I also applied to Duke because of DukeEngage for a large part. I knew that I wanted to do a summer of enrichment. And also I was really interested in doing something related to education. And as a pre-med, there's not a lot of opportunities in the summer to do things like that, or long-term internships. And so I knew I wanted to work with children and possibly go somewhere besides Duke, or go to an international or domestic site.
Azana?
And I chose my program where I wanted to do DukeEngage because it seemed like such a great opportunity, not only to kind of divulge in my interests outside of the classroom in an immersive environment, but also connecting with other like-minded individuals that maybe I didn't meet in the classroom, or I wouldn't have met otherwise, all of us coming together to work on a common goal.
Great. And Jalen, since you are the only one of these three who did the program in person, since you did it in 2019, talk a little bit about just what your day or week was like. What did you do throughout the day, throughout the week, both your work and the other things that make DukeEngage?
Sure. So there was a lot going on in a typical week, and there was a lot of variation day by day, I guess. So most of our time, it was spent on like our two pillar projects. So for the English piece, we're actually working with the staff where we were staying within the Banam Kem village. So I was working with the women in housekeeping, and basically the goal was not to just repeat like what's been done year after year, but to assess where they are in terms of their English speaking ability and kind of build off of that. So we come up with the lesson plans ourselves, figuring out what we wanted to teach and what was the most creative and fun way to do it. That was really the priority. And we ended up going over, like days of the week, months of the year. And we ended up with teaching them things that would be more relevant to like where they're working. So we taught them, so there was some housekeeping. We were teaching them how to say like common household items, like, like bed sheets, air conditioners, things like that. And then the other pillar project, the conservation piece, which is probably what Thailand was most known for, because we're working with sea turtles. So the Thai Navy, they have a Head Start program where they'll raise hatchlings of green and hawksbill sea turtles, and then they'll release them when they're large enough and healthy enough. So working over there, it was a lot of manual labor. We were doing a lot of cleaning of turtle tanks, cleaning turtles themselves, and I actually did a lot of health assessments just to make sure that like, all the hatchlings were healthy and there weren't really any problems over there. But on the days, I don't want to say downtime because it really wasn't downtime, but when we were working on our main projects, we did a lot of, I guess, community involvement efforts. Some of them were pretty intense. We did a lot of workshops with both middle and elementary schools. Some of them were English based, some of them were environment based. And we had a lot of fun with figuring out what we want to teach them and how I want to do it. There was so much creativity that was going into it. And more low-key things that we were doing, we did like community Zumba classes, we did a Muay Thai class once, and really got to experience Thai culture. And there were a lot of surprises. Like I ran a 5K with the Navy unprepared. It was hard, but it was fun. And we actually got to bond a lot with the community that we were a part of for 2 months.
Cool. Kelsey, do you want to talk a little bit about Boston? I know that's reaching back, but I'm curious to hear you talk about what you did there.
Yeah, so for Boston, the first month, I was mainly working on preparing for the summer camp for the middle and high schoolers. So I just did a lot of helping prepare slideshows, helping prepare the curriculum for the summer camp. And then the next month, I was mostly sitting in and getting to know the different people in the program. It's this organization called the Lear Project, which provides like mentorship to these students who are interested in STEM. So mostly it was helping prepare curriculum. It was really interesting.
And what about outside of work? I know Boston is really known for its deep reflection.
Outside of work, not as much, just because it was put together kind of last minute virtually, but did have like a couple Zoom lunch sessions with the coworkers.
Okay, that's true. Yeah, you did it in 2020 when we were pivoting and sort of everything was a little haphazard. What about you, Azana?
So my placement was with the Lincoln Health Center in Durham. And so I essentially was responsible for contacting Spanish-speaking patients and connecting them to social services in the Durham area. So I had 2 supervisors who were providers at the clinic, and they kind of set up an Excel spreadsheet for me, and they had the patient's name, their info, what their need was, how to get in contact with them. And so I had to research all these organizations and kind of how they worked, figured out if they had any Spanish speaking resources, and then contact the patient and also kind of build a relationship with them, make sure I fully understood what it was they were looking for out of this organization. And then I would connect the 2. So I would either translate during a conversation or kind of make sure that all the patient's needs were covered during the conversation if the organization had a Spanish speaker. So there's a lot of different layers to it, but essentially it's like a social service caseworker for Spanish speakers.
And outside of work?
Outside of work, in terms of the collaboration that we did with our cohort of DukeEngage, we would come together every week for the reflection sessions. So this connects back to what I was talking about earlier with the importance of the DukeEngage reflection during the program. We would kind of debrief every single week in terms of what we learned, maybe if we made an error, what we can do to improve it, what we found really worked well. And it also was a great way for our cohort to kind of build teamwork and collaboration amongst one another, because most of us had different placements. So it was really easy to kind of feel disjointed while working over Zoom, but kind of having those consistent times to come together and reflect with one another helped us, bring everyone back together and give us all familiarity of what each other were working on. And then we also had the sessions with our college mentees and elementary school migrant families too. And so we could play around with them. We talked about kind of what was going on in the world. We played different games and all of that. So both of those kind of things going on.
A lot going on there.
Mm-hmm.
And I know you were going to talk a little bit about what that program has led to for you.
Yes. So, and this also kind of ties into a question that, let's see, that was in the chat by Savannah, please correct me. But she asked if there are any advantages to doing DukeEngage as a first year versus other years. And so personally for me, I started working on my senior thesis last year. And so I'm looking at cultural competency and patient-provider relationships at a Duke Health clinic for Spanish-speaking providers. And so it was really perfect for me to kind of partake in a program where I was able to kind of work in the folds of a healthcare organization to kind of experience firsthand what are the primary barriers that Spanish speakers are facing within our healthcare systems. And so that really kind of gave me a deeper insight other than just reading in a textbook or doing some research, of how these things actually work. I'm actually getting to interact with these people and they're telling me what their problems are. So that was really kind of a main focus for me prior to the program. It really inspired me and drew me to this program and really helped enrich me throughout it as well. And so it relates to her question because I would say that while any of these programs would be an incredible experience at any point in your college career, I personally, from my own experience, would say that it's especially beneficial when you have kind of already developed an idea of kind of what academic track you want to go down, or if you have any kind of demonstrated interest prior to the program. And I say that because this program can be really awesome to supplement that, and if not, give you additional ideas of where you might want to go with a similar or related theme. I actually was going to study abroad, for example, after my freshman year, and it was a program that looked really, really interesting, but I wasn't yet sure what I wanted to major in. And so now looking back at it, the program would have been incredible, but it definitely is not in the area that I'm majoring in right now. And so because we have such, limited summers throughout our undergraduate career, it's really important to make sure that our experiences are tailored to our interests and how we can further grow professionally, personally, and in our academic spaces. So I would say that an advantage to doing it later on in your college career is that it can provide that kind of supplemental enrichment to an area that you've already been developing.
Great. Thank you all so much. I'm going to ask you to, I hope you can stay through the end because I think people will have some more questions for you. There's a great one in the chat about kind of how did you narrow down the program, but I want to cover some more of the basics. So hopefully we can come back to that one at the end. So to get specific, in 2022, we are expecting to have about 20 programs offered. There are still a couple that, because of the COVID situation, may pop up a little bit later than others, but I'm guessing it'll be around that many. You may apply for up to 2 programs this year, one of which may be international. So that is our rule. You can apply for 1 program or 2 US-based programs or 1 US and 1 international program, but not 2 international programs. The application deadline is January 10th. I think that's the Monday after classes start in the spring, and notifications will happen in mid-February. So sign up for our email list if you want to make sure and get reminders about those things. I'll put the link in the chat in just a moment. Let me say one more thing about the 2 programs before I forget. You are asked to rank those programs. And so in the application system, you'll be able to move them to the top, the first one's top. And if you are selected for both, you would get an offer just to the program that you ranked as your first choice.
All right, and so each program focuses on 1 or more social issues or themes. There's often a lot of intersection within that. And so that means that the daily work placements, cultural enrichment activities, and reflection sessions are all organized around the themes of the program. And if you're just beginning to think about DukeEngage, we encourage you to start there. Think about which social issues you're interested in and want to learn more about. And, not to contradict what I just said, but if you are a freshman and really want to go for it this summer, it's not to discourage you at all. If any kind of topic really, really speaks to you, even if it's not necessarily an academic interest, that exactly is what DukeEngage is for. It's for an overall enrichment. So if one of these themes really, really speaks to you and you're like, I want to, involve myself in this program, definitely just think about what strongly connects to you and your mission, your purpose, and how you want to continue on.
And I bet Kelsey will have something to say about that later. We'll come back. In terms of information gathering, someone asked, I think in the chat, when the descriptions will be live. They will be live on Monday, November 8th. So countdown of 3 days from now, except for, like I said, if there are a couple that we have to wait on to sort out some things related to COVID. Right now on your website, all you will see is 1 program description from 2021. That's because we've taken the others off to update them. And things will be popping up and down between now and Monday, but we're aiming to have them all up then. And at that point, and the reason I left 1 up is so you can just get an idea of what you'll be seeing. You will be able to look at what the work is. What will I be doing? Will it be something, directly engaged with the community, like Jalen's working with turtles, or Kelsey's working with children, or will it be something that is more of an advocacy role, like Azana maybe had, I would describe it, or something kind of more at the policy level. So you'll be able to see that. You'll be able to see, who you'd be working with. If it's important to you, you'll be able to see how you would be living in the program. So some programs are in dorms, some in guest houses, some are in homestays, which is an amazing experience. Every student I've known, even those who were very nervous going into it, said that that was one of the best aspects of their DukeEngage experience. There are a few who will be in very rustic environments, so you can look at that kind of thing. A very few have prerequisites in terms of language, so you'll be able to keep an eye on that. And one other thing I really want you to look at is the dates, because it says subject to change. They probably will change very little, within a few days at most, and the dates are important. We don't allow students to arrive late or leave early, even for wonderful things like family weddings or graduations or things like that, because DukeEngage is so short. We really want the whole group to be there the whole time. Also, program specific info sessions. So most of the directors of each of the programs will be offering their own info sessions this month, starting on Tuesday, right after the program descriptions come up. I went ahead and put a schedule for that on the web, but some of the links you'll see aren't going to work yet because the programs haven't come live, but at least you can see when those info sessions are scheduled and start looking at your own calendar and what you can attend. You definitely want to try to attend the ones you're interested in, so you can hear, from the program director directly. If you can't, you can write to them, talk to them, other things. You can reach out to a guide. You can come to our drop-in advising sessions. We have at least 4 scheduled between now and the deadline. We sometimes get, I will mention in terms of information gathering, questions about competitiveness. Actually, we often get that. There's really not a lot of useful information there. I can tell you that historically, DukeEngage has had about a 50% acceptance rate across all programs, but that does vary from program to program, and that changes from year to year, kind of which programs are getting the most attention. And this year, we have no idea what to expect. We don't know if there'll be a bit of bottleneck or if people will be a little bit wary. So the best thing you can do is just to find the program that is the best fit for you and that you're a strong applicant for. Let's talk about the application process. So the application itself consists of about 5 short answer questions about why you're interested in the program and what you think you can contribute. They are read by the program directors themselves, so not by our office. Most program directors will bring some students in for an interview. Some don't, some do. Some invite people all at once. Some invite people sort of in waves over the course of the selection period. So interview invites don't tell you very much. But notification does happen in mid-February, and you'll have about a week if you're selected to commit to that program by submitting a participation agreement, which, by the way, has to be signed by not just you, but your parents. And so or guardian. So if your family or guardian has questions, you want to make sure you've gotten those answered for them, as well as your own questions throughout the process. So once you've committed to the program, if you withdraw at that point, then we do say you're not eligible to apply to DukeEngage again, because of course at that point you've taken someone else's spot, maybe left even a community organization without some help that they were expecting. That anytime between now and when you are notified, you're welcome to withdraw your application. There are, of course, registration processes that you have to go to. And the preparation, just to mention again, all students will sign up for a series of 4 weekly seminars at times that work for them. So the groups are mixed in those. They're led by former DukeEngage students. Kelsey was one of them this past spring, who are hired and trained to do that. And they address things kind of at a high level. They get you thinking critically about community engagement and about DukeEngage itself. DukeEngage is always open to criticism. about things like identity and social change and how those two interplay, and about how to build community. This year we'll go back to adding a health and safety component, so things like that. So.
All right, so now to get into, is DukeEngage for you? So there are some specific personal qualities that will make you a good candidate for DukeEngage. So first one being that you live up to the commitments you make and you live ethically in your community. You're willing to stretch yourself just the right amount, and you can be both a self-starter when it's appropriate and take direction from a supervisor. So there's going to be times when it's difficult, you know, where you're in an unfamiliar circumstance, when you encounter a hurdle, and it's really about how do you overcome that, you know, and how do you express humility in the process of all of that as well. So those are some really main key attributes that are also important to express how you've demonstrated that in the past and how you continue to demonstrate that, and you will continue to demonstrate that in the future in your essays.
Yeah, and a few more along those same lines. So, you know, you're ready to practice being curious without passing judgment, which is sometimes difficult to do. In order to do that, you are aware of how others view you. You have an understanding of your strengths and weaknesses. You're able to kind of articulate your beliefs and values. And just as important as it is to be goal-oriented, it is definitely important to be flexible, because DukeEngage is the real world. It's not a structured course environment, and many things are going to change and not be exactly what you expected. So that's a really, really key attribute that we're looking for in students. That is all from us. There's our email address. You can get that on our website. So I'm going to stop the share so that you can see us again, and we can look through the chat, and you can unmute yourself to answer questions. Azana, how would you feel about looking at the chat and just reading out questions that you think we might not have addressed?
Yes, so I think I see Ashley's, where she asked, given that there are so many amazing programs, how did you narrow down which ones you're interested in? So it was a multi-stage process for me, and I'm sure for the other guides as well. But, you know, I started off just kind of, I flipped through all of them. Make sure you really read critically for kind of the key components, the key elements that the program is emphasizing. There's a section that talks about what kind of student that they're looking for. Really kind of compare and contrast what you know you have to offer with what the program is looking for. And then with that, you can start your first kind of list of, okay, these are my top 3 or 4 programs. And then from them, I would say really do a really critical analysis and comparison as to, okay, these are my interests. Maybe I really like this program in particular, but this other one, you know, has this additional component that this one doesn't have. So it can really come down to really minute differences. But, you know, at the end of the day, any of them are going to be incredible. So you really just have to kind of go with the one that you feel most called to. But I would say that was the process, like a process of elimination throughout multiple stages that I went through personally.
And Kelsey, I was thinking about you because you did 2 very different kinds of programs. And so in terms of how you picked them, why you picked them, you want to say anything about that?
Yeah, I was mainly looking at the themes first. So there's an option on the DukeEngage website in which you can kind of select like, oh, I'm interested in children and literacy and things like that. And so I narrowed it down by that first. And then I was looking at the program directors. Some of them are, or a lot of them are professors here. So I knew the one from Boston. And then, yeah, I just kind of narrowed it down based on location then. But both of my projects were based on education. So I mainly did it on theme.
Okay. And I just realized I have a direct question here. Does DukeEngage satisfy the public policy major required internship? We touched on that, but for public policy, I will say that some DukeEngage programs will and some won't. And there actually will be a link on our website by Monday with a list. We sit down together every year, public policy and I and their career folks and I, and talk about which programs will satisfy that requirement, I think you're always welcome to petition beyond the list that we come up with, but there is a set list for that one. For the other programs like global health and environmental studies, it's a more, I think, flexible process where you would talk with the folks there that are responsible for your internship and check and make sure what you want to do works. Okay.
I can address an old question that I saw earlier about doing it as a first year versus other years. I'm a senior now, but I did my DukeEngage like after my freshman year. So I guess I can talk about that. That is something I thought about, like when I got it, like was getting ready to go. I'm like, how's this going to impact, I guess, how you interact with, like, I guess your cohort? But it really doesn't matter, since you all bring like the same level of passion, like, to your project. And like we all bonded really well. As like me and 2 other freshmen and a lot of sophomores and juniors, and I still talk to all of them to this day. So it's really not a factor. So don't worry about that.
Do any of the 3 of you have any advice for people as they're getting ready to apply? You've already given lots of good advice, but any last words?
Well, let's see. On the application process, it'll definitely ask you to reflect on how your past experiences will tie into the program. So I'd say that as you're flipping through and deciding which ones you're most drawn to, definitely think about how everything will continue to be a building process, or how you can even relate some of your past experiences in ways that perhaps you haven't thought about before to a new theme, because a lot of skills are transferable, and that's something that DukeEngage really emphasizes too, is how can you take one skill and apply it in a new context. So I would encourage you to start thinking about that now, so that when the application comes, you'll be ready.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for attending. You're welcome to reach out to DukeEngage directly, or I think some of these folks have put their emails in the chat and they will be online soon. So we look forward to answering your questions and seeing more of you. Have a great weekend.